Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. This will never cease. OBS is just simply not my friend. It went from like 3-second delays to 15-second delays when I click the go live button for some reason. Internet speed is always the same, about the same at least, so I have no idea what the factor here is. Regardless, hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Tech. I'm very glad to welcome you to my discussion of the official announcement by Apple for the new event and for us to leave OBS officially here, which I always forget as well. I will get better at this, I promise. Is we now have the official announcement for September 12th, the Apple event called Wanderlust. Wonder, like a sense of wonder, not like wandering around. It's not really a word that has a super clear definition for all cases. By all means, it's just so much as like as a craving for wonder or something wondrous, something marvelous. So I will not be doing deep analysis into that specific word. It's kind of interesting how Apple goes about their announcements. For some reason, the animation does not work here. So Apple for the last couple of years, actually, oh, now it's working, has been like sending out invites that had like augmented reality Easter eggs. So if you were like running them through your iPhone, you could like maybe peek behind the curtain or something like that. This time around, we only get, I say only, it's still a cool thing, right? Relatively, but we get this animated Apple logo, and I've seen already some people joking that the new iPhone, the Pros, will come in blue and gray. Like if we are gonna do like deep analysis to the one Apple logo that is now associated with this event, that's what we got. Now, we obviously have nothing official from Apple when it comes to what we should expect, but obviously with like weeks, months, and even years of rumors leading up to this, it's pretty clear that this is the event, and this is why I have created this note right next to it. It's an event covering the latest iPhones, which will include the base iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, the Pro models, which will be the Pro and the Pro Max, which supposedly will be renamed into the Ultra because of its supposedly large differentiation point to the 15 Pro, to the regular 15 Pro, thanks to its periscope camera. And then we will be getting Apple Watches, which would include an update to the regular Series 9 and the Apple Watch Ultra getting a second generation. It should be noted that there would still be like an Apple Watch SE in the lineup, but that apparently is not getting an update this year, which kind of makes sense. The differentiation points between the Apple Watch SE and the Series 8 already weren't too big, so I think if Apple once again updated both models, they would have had like a hard time upselling people to the more expensive models. However, if they update just the Series and the Ultra, then they have a far better shot of getting people to not buy an Apple Watch SE and instead a much more expensive Series 9 or even an Ultra. So I see we now already have more people watching than during my iPad stream, which ironically also leads me to the point that like apparently we are not getting iPads, though there could be some possibility that we might get like an iPad mini, though rumors have been extremely scarce about it. So let's use our biggest friend of the show, 95Mac in general, and just try to get through what they believe is coming with this event, and I will not be writing down all spec points into this note, but I will be writing down what I consider either somewhat controversial or very, very interesting, right? So, of course, they also go back to this being like the iPhone event and the Apple Watch event, and that it will take on September 12th, to be more precise, at 10 p.m. Pacific time. So that will also be interesting. Wait, is it 10 p? It's 10 a.m. I should say. I'm sorry. So I don't want to spread misinformation. That I think that was some kind of weird autocorrect while I was typing, still from a German keyboard. So the tagline reads Wanderlust. Again, I will not deeply speculate on that. And features the rumored colors of the titanium iPhone Pro lineup. Oh my god, they believed it. They believed it. Guys, I don't know how to say this. Like, maybe Apple said, like, do some blue and stuff. Oh, no. Could it really be? I mean, it does have like some slight gold tones, doesn't it? And gold is supposedly going away, so wouldn't that be kind of risky? I know it's like like a radiant gray tone, right? It's just very reflective, but I would say there's a little bit of gold here. Though I am partially colorblind, so maybe I should just shut up. Regardless, like, I don't like. It's so difficult to say, because for me it was a joke. Like, I've seen it on Twitter and I thought, oh, people are analyzing like the Apple invites once again. And it's like, it works for some events like the Vision Pro ones, but like for everything else, it always goes back to colors. It's like the most basic level interpretation ever. It's like, oh, colors in this, so colors in, and it goes back to like that to the iPad Air announcement, where like the invite was like all the colors that were part of like the iPad Air, and that was one event with like really like lined up. I don't know if that will always be the case, guys. However, the blue kind of is, of course, telling, which makes me very excited. I hope that Apple will have like, I mean, they do have like a blue, right? I will not like count individual gradients of blue inside here, but whatever. It's like they have black, which of course it's difficult to do like black particles on a black background, so I will count like this as black. Then everything is like sort of grayish. And then like I don't find silver unless like maybe here, or like, but that's just supposed to be like where it's most reflective. Like, if anything, I would kind of be inclined to think that this is sort of goldish, because it's like reflecting the sun or something, supposedly. So yeah, I do believe the color rumors. I just would not try to interpret them into the invite necessarily. Though it's not a bad theory by itself. It's just people have been like wrong very often when they really try to like put a lot into this. Guys, cheers. I try not to fall asleep. I will click on the mute button the next time I drink something. So yeah, just let us go through what is supposedly coming, right? So we are getting the regular 15s, 15 pluses, and then the more premium versions, the Pros and the Pro Max. Now, when we go to the 15 and 15 plus, we are getting a lot of, I'll just be very broad here, a lot of iPhone 14 Pro specs, right? Primarily the A16 chip, and the 48 megapixel camera. Now we are not sure if it is going to be the same 48 megapixel sensor. It might be a slightly smaller one, and supposedly the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus will have like a more revolutionary like optical system than the 15 Pro and Pro Max. I'm not an expert on this, so I will not try to like break this down in detail, but it's kind of an interesting point, right? And to differentiate it again from just the pros of the last couple of years, it will not have LTPO panels, right? And therefore it will not have 120 hertz ProMotion. Now, I have always said that Apple could give their iPhones 90 hertz or even 120 hertz without actually increasing the price of the device. Anybody who knows Apple's supply chain knows that the panels that they are sourcing for the regular iPhones are very, very high quality. It just so happens that those screens are not validated for 120 hertz. Apple has not designed them for 120 hertz, and that's because they haven't been designed for ProMotion. If you have actually looked at Apple's history with higher refresh rates, they keep those exclusive to devices with a dynamic refresh rate. And that's how the original 2018 iPad Pro, basically the first ProMotion device, got 120 hertz. That's how the iPhone 13 Pro got 120 hertz, because OLED has a historically difficult time with a fully dynamic refresh rate, and LTPO was the technology that solved it. LTPO is technically a technology that was kind of invented by Apple and LG together for the Apple Watch to save energy and stuff, but it's pretty common sense, and it has since then been used by especially by Samsung, and even BOE would be capable of doing like LTPO panels, but LTPO is basically what we currently have as the most efficient and most versatile OLED technology. Because of its efficiency, because of its adaptability, it supports higher refresh rates, it supports adaptive refresh rates, it goes up to higher brightness levels than standard panels, and for now, it seems like the Galaxy S24 lineup might be the first like lineup of devices that will be fully powered by LTPO panels, though supposedly the Galaxy S24 Ultra will get the newest LTPO panels with like either 2200 nits or 2500 nits. The iPhone supposedly, the iPhone right now is, the iPhone 14 Pro is rated for 2000 nits, which is currently the highest on the market. The 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max could go even higher. We don't know if Apple has already secured like the latest generation of LTPO, but certainly not for the regular 15 and not for the regular 15 Plus. Now, we don't know certain details about individual differentiation points, but it should be noted that the entire lineup is USB-C, though the non-pros are supposedly 2.0. We've already broken down in previous streams rumors about the newest cables, which are supposedly longer, braided, color matched, but not rated for higher speeds than USB 2.0. USB 2.0 is 480 megabits per second. That's obviously not very fast by modern standards. Thunderbolt, for example, goes up to 40 gigabits. So that's a lot faster. But even in just the more open standards with like USB 3 and 3.2 and stuff, you could have like 5 or 10 gigabit speeds. And in fact, that's what most high-end Android phones have been offering for quite a while. So Apple would be like closing the gap by moving to USB-C, and on the Pros they will probably maybe even like leapfrog most Android devices with like 20 or potentially like 40 gigabits per second. It should also be noted they might go with 40 gigabits but in the sense that they have like bidirectionally 20 gigabits per second. So it might not be like Thunderbolt 4 speeds, which are 40 gigs up and 40 gigs down. So that's obviously complete overkill for the iPhone. Though of course people now take like ProRes videos on it, so, and maybe some people just want to sync the entire library one day, every day, and they might like take enough videos and photos a day to like warrant those kinds of speeds. But that definitely will not be happening with the regular 15 and 15 plus, at least from all the rumors that we have currently seen. So, in fact, I think the rumor here in 95 Mac is kind of broken down similarly to how I do it. So the iPhone 15, 15 Plus will largely inherit feature set from iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max. That includes the A16 chip with supposedly also like the faster memory, dynamic island, right? I should obviously write that down. That is going to be the design change for the non-pros this year. The pros will get like a chassis change. I would not necessarily call it like a big redesign, but I think the most dramatic change will be also something that is very much expected, which is just to get the switch from like the regular notch to the dynamic island on the regular models. So that's good that this basically reminded me. They're also bringing up the 48 megapixel camera. Now it should be said that we don't know if there will be changes to the ultra wide camera. I think it's kind of necessary. We need like the better ultra wide camera on those devices that also does like better close-up photography, but alas, we don't really know. It's always difficult to tell stuff like that, because Apple might just be like reusing a certain sensor from like the Pro, from like last year's Pro. So there aren't enough changes in like logistics so that people can predict it, right? Because Apple could potentially now be using the same ultra wide in the Plus and the Pros, and that way leakers from the chain, from the supply chain, might not be able to properly differentiate and say like, oh, this is coming to both, or this is only coming to one, right? It needs like really, really detailed analysis of that. Like you have to have like a regular iPhone 15 and the Pro and compare like the individual sensors that you find from there. Or obviously you are like somebody like Min-Ching Kuo and you like talk directly to the people supplying the actual sensors, lenses, etc. So that is something that has not fully leaked, unfortunately, because I do hope that regular iPhone non-Pro users will get a much better ultra-wide camera. Guys, as always, I point out that we have now more people watching, so please leave comments. As always, leave a thumbs up so the algorithm knows to recommend this stream to many more people. Maybe share it if you know somebody else would be interested in this. And of course, you will also find in like my channel description, my Twitter, my Mastodon links, and to anybody who wants to support me directly, my Patreon link. That being just a very, very quick shout out to this, right? But then, of course, the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max will have many more changes, as is outlined here. Now, it should be said, we don't fully know the changes for things like Wi-Fi 6E, right? Wi-Fi 6E is supposedly definitely coming to the Pros. We don't know if it's coming to the regular ones. Apple has shown a willingness to differentiate Wi-Fi 6E from Pros to non-Pro models, which usually Wi-Fi for Apple has been a pretty standard, and their most expensive devices did not like differ too much from their cheaper models when it comes to Wi-Fi technology. But I would say like Wi-Fi 6E was like the first time where we really saw a difference where Apple is willing to keep it like exclusive to pros, maybe for a year or so. We see that like with the latest MacBook Pros having Wi-Fi 6E, but not so the MacBook Air, for example. So Wi-Fi 6E question mark. They will all get stuff like the latest 5G modems. Apple usually is very, very aggressive when it comes to that, because they have like a super expensive contract with Qualcomm, with also a patent sharing agreement. So I think their mindset is kind of like, why don't we just get as many of the best modems? They're good for battery life. They will also like increase the market perception of how well our phones work with 5G, right? That has been a problem for Apple devices. For example, like the iPhone XS and 11 were not really known for giving really great cellular connectivity, but once they switched to 5G and once they really changed up some stuff with the antenna, with the iPhone 13 and 14 later on, Apple has gotten from one of the worst, not the worst definitely, but one of the lesser cellular connectivity providers, basically in terms of reliability, to really, really the best whenever a new iPhone comes out. It usually then takes like another half a year until like the latest Samsungs come out, or maybe the latest Xiaomi's, and they have like a next generation Qualcomm modem, and then they beat the latest iPhones, but not by much. I think 5G is now so, even though 5G by itself might not be mature because the actual network is not very well supported, but I think the modems are really, really good by themselves. And I think no phone truly needs like the peak speeds that 5G technically has. So Apple is in a really good position to just double down on like best efficiency and stuff like that. Yeah, beyond that, there isn't that much to like even say. As always, there might be changes to stuff like microphones, speakers, right? Even stuff like the LED flash sometimes gets updates. But the biggest thing definitely is that combination of a design change by moving to the dynamic island, the USB-C port now that will be replacing Lightning, will be complying with the EU legislation, and will just in general make it more attractive for the ecosystem that already has USB-C on the iPad, that already has USB-C and Thunderbolt on MacBooks and even like desktop Macs. So that will definitely be a big change, even though I think enthusiasts will just look at this phone and they will see stuff like USB 2.0, which most people will not care about. And then I think even people in the mid-range definitely start caring more about stuff like LTPO. Not even LTPO directly, but 120 hertz promotion, right? So I think that this will be the last year where Apple can really get away with not giving 120 hertz to the regular iPhone model. Not even because I understand that like tech reviewers will like destroy them for not having this, but I think most people will not still care that much. But I think next year the backlash will probably be pretty big once people are really, really used to several generations of Pro iPhones and iPads with 120 hertz, which ironically next year is still going to be a year where Apple supposedly is not switching to LTPO. In 2025, we are supposedly getting a full generation that would be like the iPhone 17, right? Where all iPhones have an LTPO promotion screen. So the 17, the 17 Plus, the 17 Pro, and the 17 Ultra at that point. Remains to be seen if Apple might be able to push those plans up a year, or if they might like just give you a slightly higher clock screen, right? Without even changing much. That was, by the way, what I was talking about prior, and then I like lost my train of thought when I said that Apple is using like really high quality panels. Those panels are not technically rated for 120 hertz, but when you compare that to other displays in the industry that are doing 120 hertz, like a lot of mid-range stuff and things like that, you will find that Apple's panels are in no way worse than those ones. It's just that Apple really doesn't like promotion, doesn't really like 120 hertz without promotion, and promotion for them is variable refresh rate. If they might change their mind and give us 90 hertz on like LTPS panels, which is like the cheaper version, the non-LTPO stuff, I'm not sure. I think that would be wise. I think it could really work like 90 hertz, but not promotion, and then 120 hertz and promotion, about 1,000 nits of brightness, about 2,000 nits of brightness, both dynamic island, but here with like slightly smaller bezels. I think that would really like all scale well. While if you're still limiting like these models to 60 hertz, you're definitely doing a little bit of a disservice to people who are still paying $800 and $900 for the base models of those phones. So, and in Europe that's like €1,000. So yeah, I definitely think that Apple should give us 90 hertz, but I doubt they will. Now, when we go to 15 Pro and 15 Ultra, now, of course, those are also USB-C, right? But much faster, right? We don't know if it's fully Thunderbolt, but it's definitely going to be a lot better than what will be on the non-Pro models. It will supposedly keep some of the basics of the current camera setups, in terms of 48 megapixels, and supposedly still 12 megapixels for the other cameras, but 3x zoom on Pro, 5 or 6x on Ultra, right? Again, I don't really need to read this here. It's just kind of like to make sure that I really don't forget anything. And I mean, I don't even like how they structured this article. I mean, they say like iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, however, will tout many more changes. USB-C charging port will replace the Lightning port. It will do the same on the 15 and 15 Plus, so I really don't know. Like, why would they put it like this, right? So, yes, this has like thinner bezels and a titanium chassis. Now, it should be said that we don't fully know if the titanium chassis, similar to the periscope camera, might be exclusive to the Ultra. We don't know basically how much titanium Apple has sourced. We don't even like, and supposedly like the Ultra will be like 35 to 40% of the entire lineup. The largest percentage ever for an Pro Max model in terms of sales, which is kind of understandable given how attractive this phone will be. And the titanium chassis, I don't know if Apple will might try to differentiate it. Maybe they will think that titanium might not be necessary on the regular Pro, which is already much lighter than the Pro Max. But for now, it seems like rumors point to both of them having titanium. A17 based on 3 nanometer. Now, we recently got reports that Apple supposedly has purchased all of TSMC's 3 nanometer supply for this year, which, as far as I understand, would also make it really unlikely that we could get the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, right, which will be coming early next year, that one could be 3 nanometer, because it really takes a longer time in the supply chain, in the first production steps, in testing it out. If Apple truly really booked up everything for themselves when it comes to N3B, which would be the first generation of 3 nanometer mass production, that to me would point towards that Apple really has has 3 nanometer on lockdown until like the second half of next year. Whether that will be a refresh of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, maybe a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 3, or if it will be like the first generation of like tile-based Intel chips, which would have some 3 nanometer parts on the processor, or if it might take us all the way up to late 2024 until AMD and Nvidia launch their latest generation of chips. But for now, it seems like for the next 6 to 9 months, it's either Apple on 3 nanometer or bust. That there's no reasonable other purchaser for 3 nanometer. Now, obviously, the latest node always allows us to make more efficient chips, and with higher efficiency also usually comes better performance, because if you are trying to limit yourself to one certain power envelope, which on phones is like very much limited by just their size. Yes, you could theoretically double or even triple the amount of passive cooling that a smartphone has. The problem with that long term though is like it's great for like peak usage, but the battery drain would still be impacted, right? Because more heat would signal that the phone uses more power, and using more power means that you're draining the battery quickly. So while I would believe that Apple might further improve cooling, they did so on the 14th gen, I am not quite sure if they will do like crazy vapor chambers like Samsung has done. This is definitely something where Samsung currently leads Apple. Their higher end products have better cooling relative to the chip that they have, which allows them to sometimes have a better peak speeds, again, relative to the actual chip. Apple's chips are still usually faster. And when it comes to display brightness, Apple has an advantage over Samsung currently, in that Apple ironically uses a much newer generation of LTPO on their Pro iPhones, which means that even if Apple has like technically worse cooling, that just the sheer amount of extra efficiency that that panel offers makes up for it. So that's something really interesting, I think, to consider when we when we actually try to compare phones in terms of like performance, battery life, cooling, and Apple definitely will be doing a lot of points to the favor of the latest iPhones by going exclusively with a 3 nanometer processor. Now, it should be said, we don't know how much RAM the A17 would use. Long-time rumors have pointed to it using 8 gigabytes. Some recent rumors have pointed towards it being 6, so I will not be writing directly what I think it will be. But supposedly we do know that they will still be using LPDDR5 and not LPDDR5X, which is would be around 25 to 35% faster, which would offer a lot more bandwidth, also be more efficient. So it's a shame that Apple won't be using them. But it should also be noted that Apple just switched like RAM speeds with the iPhone 14 Pro Gen and didn't even couple that with a much faster GPU. So Apple still has a lot of GPU bandwidth to spare for their phones. It's just that Apple's cache is so large that they're in comparison to other mobile chips, that they are far less reliant on the bandwidth. But obviously that's not like, it's not a perfect scaling. You cannot just compensate for bandwidth with cache, but Apple has never had abysmally slow bandwidth either. So that's just one consideration to have here. Then something that I'm very much looking forward to, action button, which would be similar to like what the Apple Watch Ultra introduced, which would be programmable either with Apple's presets, which could include stuff like camera, which in my opinion will be the most popular option, or the flashlight, and of course you can combine it with like shortcuts that you program yourself into the phone, so it will be very, very versatile. What else do they say? They say it will be a design refresh, thinner bezels, and slightly curved edges. Again, all those like 3D renders and stuff like that that we have seen, like it's really really slight. So I'm really hesitant to call it like a design. Well, it's technically a design refresh, right? But it's a relatively small one. I hope that it's just more comfortable in the hand, right? Even if it's just like 10 grams lighter and has curved edges, I think that would go a long way to make the Pros like really no-brainer, even for people who have historically like shunned them because they are made out of stainless steel. They're pretty heavy and stuff like that, so that would go a long way to rectify that problem. USB-C, which I've also like clarified to also be faster than on the regular 15s. Battery life improvements. Now, I cannot guarantee for that whatsoever because a lot of rumors regarding battery have been kind of unclear, right? Not because those rumors are contradictory in what the battery improvements will be. By all accounts, we are switching to a stacked battery technology, which would maximize internal space usage inside like the battery housing, basically, and that would allow for better density and for actual better heat management for the battery. However, we don't know if that technology is quite ready this year in the kind of mass production level that the iPhone 15 Pro and Ultra would need. By all accounts, I think it could be. There are rumors that the next year's Galaxy S24 lineup could be ready. However, it's also always very important to mention the reason why the latest Samsungs usually have like slightly better, like slightly newer tech, I would say, than the iPhones that launched 6 months prior. Well, for one, the iPhone did launch 5-6 months prior, but the other point is that the entirety of the Galaxy S series doesn't even sell as well as just the Pros, especially not compared to like the entire thing that includes like the non-pros and the pros. And then a lot of the pro and a lot of the best features are then reserved for the ultra Galaxy version, which like does not compare to either the regular Pro or the Pro Max, which will now become the Ultra supposedly, in terms of sales. So as much as I usually applaud Samsung for just giving us great tech, and they've certainly done even stuff like offering us a periscope camera much earlier, though I would say it's been a little hit and miss. I'm not a big fan of the quality level of the periscope zoom unless we're really, really comparing it in bright daylight. And quite honestly, I have also been very skeptical about Apple fully replacing the 3x zoom camera with a 5x zoom camera. My perfect solution would be a variable zoom lens system that would allow for effective zoom between like 3 and or 6 or 7x even optically, right? And then beyond that you do digitally, as you do then between 1 and 3x because the main camera is usually so much better that at 2x the quality is still like better than the native 3x of an optical zoom camera. This technology already exists. It is in the latest Xperia phones. Supposedly the next gen Galaxy S24 Ultra will be getting this. So by the way guys, I'm really doing like a lot of like Galaxy S lip service here, even though I am known kind of as an Apple sheep. It's because I think that it's kind of relevant, because yes, those features will be undoubtedly better than what the current generation of Samsung has, but I also like to point out that the reason why not everybody immediately switches to the latest iPhone is because it won't take too long for a Galaxy S series that might have features that the iPhone doesn't have. Now to me there is no appeal in the Samsungs because I don't like One UI whatsoever. I'm somewhat neutral on Android in general. I don't like the design of the current Galaxy S lineup, and I absolutely hate like Galaxy S24 Ultra 3mm or something, right? I'm sorry, this is in German, but I think it will become pretty apparent. Right, this is supposedly our next Galaxy S24 Ultra with over 3 mm thick bezels. Now, just in comparison, the latest iPhone will have half of that, and when we compare it to like, oh Jesus Christ. Like, I hate, like, it's just like, you cannot do anything with, like, the ad block. Yeah, okay, so they do outline here. That's, by the way, from Ice Universe, so it's been pretty reliable. So if you think that Apple's slimmest bezel record will be broken, by the time the next year's Galaxy S lineup launches, because Samsung has been historically more aggressive with slimmer bezels than Apple. Well, prepare again. Apple's bezels will be about half as thick as the top bezel, going from 3 mm supposedly on the next Galaxy S24 Ultra to 1.55 millimeters on the iPhone. Now, I don't know if Apple's side bezels might be a little thicker. It might depend on how you count, right? They might be technically the same as on the top and bottom, but then there's also still like the little bit of the titanium frame. But regardless, even if you account for that, that will then still be also half as thick. So this is absolutely insane, and this is why I'm actually really excited for this iPhone, because I've always said I'm fine with like everything that is like smaller than 3 mm, right? For a modern phone. This is why I've been perfectly happy to keep my 13 Pro Max and not upgrade to the 14 Pro Max. Just for comparison, the 13 Pro Max is at 2.5 mm, and the 14 Pro Max is at 2.1 mm. So both are completely fine to me. But getting an iPhone that will so dramatically destroy the still yet to come Galaxy is kind of crazy to me. Supposedly also all Galaxies are like going flat next year, which would be definitely very much welcome from me. I've always said that I hate like rounded off bezels here, and supposedly this will be finally rectified, which like the S24 and the S24 Plus don't have those anymore, but the S23 and S23 Plus, but the Ultra still does, and I'm very glad that the S24 Ultra will not as well. And supposedly all those phones are also going like really rectangular, kind of like the iPhone, and then it remains to be seen would they still have like then the newer rounded off edges, which would come like on the 15 Pro and 15 Ultra. So that to me is probably the most interesting part here, because I'm always really interested in like good competition, and this would be a very interesting year. As you should also like just keep for comparison that like the S24 Ultra will also not get a major like sensor improvement similar to the iPhone, but instead that it would rely on like processor improvements to make the camera still perform better. And the iPhone in contrast would then get still a big lens improvement, which would allow for like 20% more light onto the main sensor. So if you are somebody like me who believed that the iPhone 14 is, except for some small like high dynamic range scenarios, mostly takes better pictures and certainly videos than the S23 Ultra, then you should be kind of frightened by what the iPhone 15 Ultra might do. The one thing where the S24 Ultra might be superior is that it could get actually that kind of variable zoom tech that I've outlined. So it would potentially like lose the 3x zoom camera, but instead start at 3x optical zoom and then go all the way up to like 6-7x. That would be obviously something that is superior to what Apple will be offering us this year. Now beyond that, we are still like getting all kinds of different rumors like almost last minute. I wonder if like Mark Gurman has like kept some of that stuff deliberately hidden in his latest Power On newsletter. Again, like for the iPhone, I think that's basically it in terms of actual spec points. In terms of actual devices, again, the Apple Watch, they will all be getting like the S9 chip, and that will apply to the Ultra and the Series 9. So I think that will be quite interesting to just how much faster it is. It's supposedly 5 or 4 nanometer, which will be finally a big leap from the 7 or even 6 nanometer that it has been on for quite a while. So this will definitely be something that I look forward to. I know a lot of people don't care for like processing improvements on the Apple Watch. However, better efficiency is always welcome. And my battery was like running low. I forgot that I unplugged it. Guys, by the way, the one thing that I hate about like Apple's latest MacBooks, I really don't like MagSafe. Like I really don't. I think it's for some reason super unreliable. I will just briefly check. Okay, that's weird. For some reason my MacBook isn't charging. Okay, now it is. I hate fucking MagSafe. I'll just get like myself newer USB-C ports, USB-C cables for everything, and then I'll be happy. I don't need much more than that. Okay, so and on the Apple Watch Ultra, we will supposedly be getting a black color option, which, as you know, like titanium is difficult to like change the color of. So the Apple Watch Ultra originally came just in like the natural titanium color. So this would be a nice change. So we do have, as I've already outlined, apparently no iPads to expect from this, but apparently we could expect AirPods with USB-C. Now that's pretty new, so obviously I cannot fully like guarantee it. I don't think anybody can, but you know what I mean, right? It has not been substantiated by months and months of leaks leading up to it, though it should be said that Mark Gurman had promised something like that already back in July. So it might just gotten quiet around it. I do expect that Apple will just like update their accessories in general. Stuff like the Magic Trackpad, the Magic Keyboard. They've already updated stuff like the Siri remote. So that to me would be quite interesting what happens to the AirPods. So again, I cannot read Mark Gurman's like regular reporting, unfortunately. Like the Power On newsletter is freely available, but all the other stuff is like behind the paywall. I've tried prior, maybe it's some kind of problem also with my ad block, but I'm not gonna turn it off as we already have all news that we kind of need here. So all 4 iPhone 15 models launching next month are widely expected to be equipped with a USB-C port instead of Lightning. Alongside this change, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman today reported that Apple plans to announce updated AirPods with a USB-C charging case during its event on Tuesday, September 12th, at the Steve Jobs Theater, which is nice. The report does not provide any additional details about the updated AirPods, so I kind of assume it would be like just the regular AirPods, but now like USB-C. So it's unclear if it's referring to the standard AirPods or the AirPods Pro. Well, to me it would look kind of weird if we get like AirPods Pro that are still Lightning, but then the regular, like the regular non-Pro AirPods get like USB-C. So I assume it's either AirPods only, AirPods Pro, or all AirPods. And I think it wouldn't be too unlikely that, except for maybe AirPods second gen, which are supposed to be like the cheap offering anyway, kind of like the 9th gen iPad that Apple keeps around. So that would be like their one like Lightning product, and the rest all has like USB-C and wireless charging as well. Both models will need to be eventually updated to match the iPhone 15. Garmin and other sources previously claimed that the AirPods would be updated with USB-C charging case later this year, while hidden code level references new AirPods and the new charging case were uncovered in iOS 16.4 back in March. Yeah, that's kind of interesting because stuff like this always gets pushed, and stuff like this always gets like tested prior. So sometimes we just get rumors like this that come up months in advance, sometimes years. So I wouldn't, just because it like showed up in 16.4, it obviously never shipped with 16.4. So it could be happening with like the official iPhone announcement. It's also unclear if the updated AirPods will have any new features. It should be noted that for years we have expected AirPods to come with some kind of health sensors. Supposedly they're not ready yet, or something. It's always difficult to tell, but my hunch would be kind of that we are just getting AirPods with USB-C, but with no other major changes. Again, I would love to get some changes. I would then probably get myself a pair of the latest AirPods Pro, and then like give my AirPods Pro second gen to my mom or something like that. So yeah, just for context, the 3rd gen AirPods launched in October 2021, and then AirPods Pro were released last year in September. There are several other Apple products and accessories that will likely need to transition from Lightning to USB-C. AirPods Max, yes, definitely. MagSafe, the MagSafe battery pack, the Magic Mouse, the Magic Trackpad and keyboard, as I've outlined. Various adapters. Well, Apple, as far as I understand, already has like pretty much all kinds of USB-C adapters ready anyway. And yes, as I've also already said, Apple already updated the Siri remote with USB-C. So that would be quite interesting how quickly they go about it. I think historically, the way they updated, they went from like the 30-pin connector to Lightning was super quick. But in this case, they also already have done a lot of work leading up to USB-C in general. So yeah, the thing that leaves us at the end, basically, because I don't want to make this stream super long, because as I've outlined in my last stream, there's a lot of personal stuff coming up tomorrow, so I want to be like really rested for this. So supposedly the regular iPhones will keep the same price as the prior generation, and then the Pros and Ultras will be either 100 how does dollar work? Okay, sorry, I have never typed like dollars on my German keyboard. It would be $100 to $200 more expensive. Now, the regular model is hard to it's hard to imagine the smaller Pro being more than $100 more expensive. Part of that would be that it doesn't have the periscope zoom, and there is a small chance that it might not have a titanium chassis. At which point, even $100 upcharge would be kind of difficult to explain, I would say. But at the very least, in that case, I would hope that $100 more would then also be rewarded with like double the base storage. and then the Ultra could be $200 more expensive than the current $1099. However, then I would expect it at a starting price at potentially of $1299. I would definitely expect it to have double the base storage. If it's just $100 more expensive with the titanium chassis, the A17 chip, 3 nanometers, like super expensive, and everything else basically. And of course, yeah, the periscope's camera being the main thing. If it's $100 more expensive, I think there's a good chance that it stays at 128 gig standard. If it is $200 more expensive, I think Apple would be kind of insane to not double the base storage at that point. Storage, especially nowadays, is so cheap that I think it would be a really bad move and it would gather unnecessary backlash. Series 9, Series 10, I expect pretty much the same price here. Again, oh yeah, I always forget that like saying the word of the generation of the Apple Watch invokes the digital assistant on my iPad. The Apple Watch Ultra 2nd Gen, I would expect to also be the same price. At least partially, because it's not a big update. There might be a small chance that like the black color option could be more expensive, but that would just be speculating right now on my part. Yeah, so this is basically the things you should expect. So apparently no iPad. We have already talked about iPad Pro rumors in my last stream, but as I've said, there's like a minuscule chance of a mini coming. I don't believe it will, but it is what it is, right? It's always difficult to truly find out. I'll just do that properly, subheading instead. AirPods with USB-C, I think that if they're part of the event, that's one thing. I think there's just a chance that we get like a ton of accessory updates on the website, and AirPods would be among those. Now, with the Apple Watch, I don't know if we could also get like technologies like support for Qi charging. Currently, they only rely on like Apple's proprietary wireless charging standard, but we have not heard rumors like that. I would be very much in favor of that. I do understand the complexities of making that happen, but it would be really fantastic if like the Apple Watch, the iPhone, and the AirPods could all charge with a standard like MagSafe adapter. That would be really, really awesome in my eyes. Yeah, and across the board, I would say that this definitely does have Wi-Fi 6E, by the way. Because Wi-Fi 6E is just so ubiquitous. We are almost on the precipice of getting like a proper Wi-Fi 7, so this is kind of a must at this point. And especially there were rumors that Apple might skip like Wi-Fi 6E, but they are not doing so on the iPad Pro, they're not doing so on the MacBook Pro, so I highly doubt that they would then ignore it on the iPhone. Also, going with Wi-Fi 6E is always just a good chance to just improve the antenna. If it does on the regular, if they do so only on the Pros, that's one thing. If they do so on the base models, even better. There supposedly are also like smaller changes across the board, like newer, more efficient ultra wideband chip. That's the chip that helps you like locate stuff like AirTags and the latest generation AirPods. Of course, as I've also said, like the latest generation Qualcomm modems for 5G. And as always, smaller changes, speakers, microphones, stuff like that. We don't know if there might be any hardware changes to like other cameras, right? Maybe the ultra wide would get even better. Maybe even like the regular 3x zoom camera could get like a slightly better sensor or something like that. But it seems like the best stuff will be like like the better main camera on the 15 Plus in terms of cameras, and on the Pros it will be like slightly better light sensitivity for the main camera, but then a much better zoom on the Ultra, especially if you count like further away zoom is better. I have always said 3x is like 3 to 4x is like the best zoom range. It's the most useful one for like regular day-to-day photography. This is why I've been always so adamant that Apple should add variable zoom instead of going just with 5 or 6x. But again, it is what it is. You cannot just like dream up technologies to come into like big mass production levels. It might take a year or two before Apple can truly supply enough iPhones with those variable zoom technologies. However, I fully believe that they will do so at some point. I don't think that Apple will be perpetually happy with fixed zoom on the periscope or just in general the optical zoom cameras, and especially if Samsung also goes ahead with their own version, that would push them further ahead to try to meet the competition. Then the A17 chip, details about it have been mostly scarce. I've already covered like the RAM rumors. It should also be noted that like we were expecting like a decently big GPU redesign last year, and it definitely didn't happen. I would say that the lack of any meaningful GPU upgrades on the A16 was the most suspicious thing about that chip. It kind of looked like Apple had bigger plans for the GPU, but then scrapped them last minute and essentially just reused the GPU tech from the iPhone 15. Now, we've had some rumors about like just how many GPU cores here would be, but I always encourage people to not focus on direct comparison to previous generations unless you truly know that there are no big architectural changes. There were some years where Apple went down in terms of GPU core count because the new architecture was so different. Like the switch to the iPhone 10 is always a good example, that like with the A11 chip that had like less GPU cores than the A10 because it was a brand new architecture. It was also designed to work with the neural engine in tandem. And just in general, there's also always like stuff to consider in terms of performance that might not even just be CPU or GPU. There might be significant updates to like the ProRes media encoders and decoders. So maybe taking like ProRes video would get like an extreme quality uplift. There's the neural engine changes, and the neural engine does a lot more stuff these days, from like offline Siri functionality and voice dictation to even stuff like managing animations in the weather app. And supposedly, what we were supposed to get with the A16 was like ray tracing on the GPU. And the way Apple has talked about ray tracing in the last couple of years really makes us believe that eventually they will have like proper hardware ray tracing. For now, they do actually some decent software support in the Metal API, but it's just like you cannot do software rendered ray tracing. It's just not powerful enough. You either need a complete architecture rewrite where you can use like the regular shaders more efficiently for ray tracing. That's what AMD has done. Or you are doing extra cores that then do the ray tracing computation in tandem to the regular shader compilations. That is how Nvidia is doing it. We don't know which route Apple might take. It might depend slightly on what is the most efficient way to utilize their high cache counts. But if that will be part of the A17, it's not even really the ray tracing itself that is exciting. I think ray tracing games, for example, on phones are pretty worthless. But but I think if Apple has a big GPU redesign and we suddenly get like 50% higher GPU performance at the same power usage or something like that, that would be pretty insane. Like, even if it's just 35 or 40% at the same power usage, it's still a really, really big uplift for anybody who likes to do either a lot of gaming on their, a lot of intense gaming on their phone, or just a lot of gaming and would be happy to get some efficiency improvements that also improve your battery life. For usability, I think the action button is probably the largest feature here, and especially for like photographers and videographers, this will be a big deal. For anybody who like didn't like a lot of weight in their hand, the titanium chassis could help bring that down, or it could give you a much larger battery at the same weight, right? You could get a much heavier battery, but the much lighter chassis, and that would go hand in hand. So, would that all justify the price increases? I don't know. I think $200 would be in no way justified without doubling at least doubling the storage. I think $100 across the board would be acceptable while still keeping 128 gigabytes. But my preference would be that we get $100 price increase, also fully understanding how Apple's margins work and how inflation has worked. But that we also get double the storage. So the price for the 256 gigabyte models would in that case be the same as the current generation. And I've just looked up the euro. The euro is like up like 8 to 9% in comparison to a year before. So could there be a chance that like the euro prices might be less affected? I don't think so. I think if the euro had gone up by like 12 or 15%, then we might see like Apple saying, okay, we keep euro prices basically the same as this gen, but then we increase dollar prices. I mean, they have done so for the euro, right? Last year they haven't changed the dollar prices, but they upped the euro and the pound prices. So this could be like a really good thing, but I don't think the actual like recovery of the euro or the pound, the British pound, has been profound enough, unfortunately, to justify the prices in euro or Great Britain not going up. So that's kind of a shame a little bit. For the Apple Watch, I've already said I do look forward to a more efficient and potentially faster chip. We might see more improvements on the Series 9 than we think. It could get like the super bright screen from the first generation Ultra, but that is, again, it's not rumors that we've actually gotten, it's just my speculation. And there's always stuff that will still like be somewhat similar to the iPhone, like the more efficient ultra wideband chip. We might finally get like better Wi-Fi stuff on the Apple Watch, because historically it's been like limited to Wi-Fi 4. Maybe we could get at least like Wi-Fi 5 or something like that. So it could be more independent. We don't know if we might get some kind of 5G connectivity, because it has been historically limited to 4G. But again, no actual rumors in that regard. It's just like potential stuff. I've already covered the regular iPhones, but I've also always been very open that those are just like much less interesting to me than the Pro and the Ultra. And I think now that Apple plans to make the Ultra like 35 to 40% of the produced models, it's pretty clear that they know that most people will care like for the Pro and Ultra more so, especially than the Plus. The Plus has not been a great seller last year. AirPods with USB-C kind of go hand in hand with just the expectation that everything will be going USB-C, and no iPad, maybe like a mini. Just for context, 2 years ago the iPad mini got like the A15 chip that also like the iPhone 13 Pro Max did, the iPhone 13 Pro in general, and there could be a chance that we might see the A17 chip do something similar. similar, like also launched like almost simultaneously to the iPhone. However, I do not believe that this will be happening. Like the supply for like 3 nanometer is just not high enough. I don't think that Apple would want to like get any of it away from the iPhone, especially if they feel like maybe that demand might be larger than expected, because for now Apple seems to calculate that demand will be ever so slightly down because the overall smartphone industry is selling worse. So yeah, I wouldn't count on an iPad, and at best case maybe a mini, or maybe some kind of price changes on like the 10th gen iPad. But yeah, all of that is speculation. Everything that isn't like really like covered by great rumors, I always make sure to label that as speculation. I've also covered what I think would be fair here in terms of prices. I actually believe the prices would be pretty fair for like the Apple Watch. I think last year people have been pretty surprised that the Apple Watch Ultra launched at $800. It's by no means cheap, but I think a lot of people expected it to be $900 or even a full $1,000. And the iPhone Pro finally going up in price. It should be noted that like the iPhone 10 in 2017 was the first model to introduce the $999 starting price. Since then we also got like double the base storage, going from 64 gigabytes to 128 gigabytes. We also have like an objectively more expensive cellular solution by going with 5G, where it's not only more expensive to get the modem, but Apple also had to like make that royalty and patent sharing agreement with Qualcomm. And then across the board you get like 3 cameras on the Pros instead of 2. You get now the much larger and objectively more expensive cameras and lens systems. I think the only thing that is stayed like relatively similar in terms of cost is like the display, because the original like OLED panel was like pretty expensive for its day, like with the flexible technology that lets it like curve underneath itself, and now Apple uses like just the best LTPO panels, which are similarly high-end for this point in time as that OLED was for its time. Even like the chassis itself is like more expensive when Apple like switched to the rectangular design. They've also used like more aluminum and stuff for the heat dissipation systems. Those are not excuses. This is just context, right? I fully understand that Apple's margins are always high, and I've been plenty of critical for stuff like how they price like storage upgrades, but I think $100 higher price is not that unreasonable to ask for, considering all the upgrades we're getting, and considering that phones nowadays last even longer than they did like the iPhone 10 in 2017, with like 5 or 6 years of pretty much guaranteed usage. And also nowadays you have like stuff that like Apple's DIY program that might make repairs easier in the future, and you have like potentially the big redesign for the internal chassis of the 15 Pro and 15 Ultra that would make it similar to the regular iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, which is pretty easy to access for repairs from both the front and the back, which makes both display and battery replacements really, really easy. So that change alone would like switch up a lot when it comes to repairs for the Pro models. Because currently like to repair like the back glass is like hyper expensive on the 14 Pro, but comparatively like 2.5 to 3 times cheaper on the regular 14. So in this case, on the 15 Pro and Ultra, you would get the same benefit as you currently get on the non-Pro iPhone 14. So that was a little bit of a tangent. I know that it's not important to everybody who obviously watches me and Apple content in general, but I think it's interesting to consider with everything together. I think most people just will be interested in stuff like USB-C, to be honest. It's always difficult to like really nail down what people want. I think historically people are not actually that favorable of switching stuff like ports, but with how ubiquitous USB-C is in everything else, your tablets, your laptops, your non-AirPods headphones, even now like your TV remotes, to me it's like your vaping stuff, like the husband of my mom like smokes, and I've seen that like has a USB-C port, so that was pretty funny to me. Yeah, and obviously like the latest accessories like mice and uh, other keyboards and stuff like that do also run through USB-C. So that will be, I think, a much easier transition for most people than even transitioning from 30 pin to Lightning was. Because yeah, but Apple like kept their promise when they introduced the iPhone 5 and said that Lightning would be their modern connector for the next decade. It actually was like now for a little bit, for what will be 11 years. So kudos to them for keeping that promise. However worthless it might have been, they should have, in my opinion, switched to USB-C when they introduced the iPhone 10. I think that would have been a really good opportunity. They could have still kept like the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus on Lightning for anybody who really wants to stay in the old ecosystem. And then with the iPhone 10R and 10s, they could have switched the entire high-end lineup. And then by the time like the next iPhone SE comes around, they could have updated that to USB-C as well, and then we could have had like a full USB-C lineup by at the very latest 2020, more like 2019. I think that would have been far more palatable. Like Apple had like their first USB-C product with like the 12-inch MacBook in 2015. So the fact that they didn't, and Apple was like instrumental in like the final design stages of USB-C. So to me, I'm very glad that this is finally happening, but I will not be irrational here and say like that this is just a giant W. I think that Apple has done a remarkable job in keeping iPhones really attractive despite certain limitations. Stuff like the USB 2.0 speed for enthusiasts, right? Stuff like Lightning in general. Also like just a more lockdown operating system, which supposedly will be changing next spring due to EU legislation, stuff like that. The fact that the iPhone customer satisfaction is this high and that the switcher rate from Android is like supposedly only picking up steam is kind of insane, and I think that USB-C will like really accelerate the latter, right? I think maybe the demand from like true iPhone users will not be that insane, but I think people switching from Android, and this is why I've really gone above and beyond in like trying to compare it to the upcoming Galaxy S series, where sure, if you compare those phones to the Galaxy S series, which supposedly will be like fully LTPO, all of them will have like at the least 3 cameras and stuff like that. This starts to look less interesting in my opinion. Those phones truly are like for people who just want a good iPhone but not necessarily need the best, not necessarily care for perks like higher refresh rates, faster ports and stuff like that, extra versatility in the cameras. They just want like one great main camera, a decent selfie camera, a good bright screen, a good battery life, and something that works really well in their ecosystem. And especially if they like keep the same price while increasing the prices here, they could like really create maybe like a 50-50 sales thing, right? Where you could have like 30% sales here, maybe 15% sales here, so that would be like 45. Then you could get the Ultra, supposedly like 35 to 40%. So that together is already either 90. That together would already be like 65-70% altogether. Well, with the regular 15, I mean, right? With that phone, it would be like 80-90%, and then you get like a few more pros. I assume the regular pros would still like sell better than the plus. That's kind of been like what's been happening this year. So if I were to like really guess, I would say this sells like 40%. Then historically, the regular version is like the most popular. Maybe that will be like 25%. So that's together 65%. And then this could be like 20%, so that would be 85, and then this would be 15%, which, yeah, that comes up to around 100. My math quickly left me. I'm usually really, really good at head math, but I'm also really, really tired. Yeah, so that would be kind of my speculation. Selling most, selling second best, selling third best, selling fourth best. And it would really line up with what we've seen this year as well. Yeah, besides that, there isn't that much more to cover, to be honest, guys. Anybody who's still here, we have like 6 people watching. Like, do you have any questions that you would really like me to answer? The chat has been like suspiciously quiet this time around. I kind of expected this one to be an invite for like a somewhat loud chat, but I mean, it's not like I force you guys to chat. I fully understand that sometimes, depending on the time, for example, like I have a lot of US viewers. My US viewers obviously would not be able to really contribute a lot at this time. For most of them, it was like pretty early by the time I started out. Like most people either coming back from work in like New York and in California, still being very much at work. And my German peeps have usually been pretty reserved in the chat. They usually like comment at me either later on or, for example, on Twitter. So yeah, I fully understand why the chat is a little more quiet. I hope you still found the stream pretty interesting. I don't, David Meredith, lol, I missed most of the broadcast, mostly interested in the Ultra 2. Yeah, sorry, David. I tried to do this as like I started like 2 hours earlier than I do most streams, kind of blame YouTube basically, because I looked at YouTube Studio, and YouTube Studio said that most of my viewers would technically have time around now. So I really tried it, even though I didn't actually believe it. And yeah, apparently I was right. Like, people watched me, but by all accounts, people weren't quite in yet the zone to really participate. And yeah, you're saying you're mostly interested in the Ultra 2. Seeing here, I will be getting most likely the Ultra 2nd Gen myself, unless I really fall in love with some kind of color. Like, maybe Apple brings like back space black for the regular stainless steel Apple Watch. That is my favorite Apple Watch color ever. It's currently actually exclusive to the Apple Watch Hermes, which is such a damn shame. Like, go to the Apple Watch, at the Apple Watch Hermes, and buying it, and you will see what I mean, right? You can get it in silver, which looks okay, right? That's very much the standard stainless steel silver, but space black. Oh, this looks so good. Like, this is just a dream, in my opinion. Like, I've had like a stainless steel space black Apple Watch Series 2. Sorry. Okay. My personal assistant did not activate for some reason. Usually when I say the word for generation on the Apple Watch, it activates. But yeah, space black is to die for. But if they do get like a really nice black on the titanium model on the Ultra, then I could be persuaded. If you actually look at the regular Apple Watch, the Series 8, oh my god, I said it again. So buy, and if you go with stainless steel, right, there are 3 finishes: gold, there is silver, and there is graphite, and I really am not a big fan of graphite. So yeah, for me it's either ultra in black or space black on the regular Apple Watch if they stop making it exclusive to the Apple Watch Air Max, which I think is such a dumb fuck decision on their part. So if we go to like the Apple Watch Ultra, yeah, so it's just one color, unfortunately, and I kind of like I don't want any of those bands. I don't want any of these bands. I would probably buy like either the ocean band, so I have something really nice for swimming, or I would get like I don't even know which one I would probably get. Like probably like the trail loop in black, something classic like this. Yeah, so that would be what I would want from the Apple Watch. So I'm really glad, David, you could still join. Hopefully, you might be interested in like checking out the stream like as a VOD later on. Then you can also like change maybe my talking speed, because for some reason I've been talking really, really fast. Maybe like my Coke actually has some Coke inside. That, by the way, YouTube is not in terms of service. This is a joke alluding to the fact that Coca-Cola used to have actual cocaine inside. I don't consume any illegal drugs. Oh, God. Yeah, so those are the rumors. I'll just briefly check if there might have come out anything else, right? Because the USB-C stuff has launched while I was actually like starting to talk, and I barely caught it on Twitter before coming on here. Oh, there is a hash emoji. That's great. Oh, with like the gray and blue colors. And it happens when you type in hashtag Apple event, which all good, mate. Cheers. Yeah, yeah, David. I know you're cool. I know YouTube ain't sometimes. So this is AirPods. Apple releases all the kinds of betas, right? I will be updating all my devices once we're done here. And I think I would just briefly want to talk about like the iPads, because as I've outlined, we are not getting any updates supposedly at this event. As I've said, maybe a mini, but that's also unlikely. And the recent rumors were about a new iPads Pro with an M3 chip, OLED displays, a redesign, a new Magic keyboard and stuff like that. But that would be reserved for still sometime next year, supposedly either in spring or early summer. So that would make like WWDC next year kind of the last potential point where it could be introduced, and then Mark Gurman would still be correct. But obviously there's always the chance that Mark Gurman isn't correct. Then the iPad mini, which is now 2 years old, right? Minchi quotes that in January that the next iPad mini would likely enter mass production in the first quarter of 2024. So yeah, it definitely does not line up with what I'm saying. Let us just get rid of this. He also said there may be no new iPad releases in the following 9 to 12 months. The next update to the iPad mini would likely amount to a spec bump. The A15 chip could be bumped to the A16. I don't believe so. I think if they would be updated, it would likely be the A17. The A16 is more expensive than the A15 without delivering a big upgrade. That's good when you're doing like annual iPhone updates, but if you're doing updates for the iPad like every 2 years to almost 3 years in the case of the iPad mini, I don't see a point in just giving a one generation update to the processor, especially one that is barely better. Then they also line up stuff like better Wi-Fi, whether it would be like Wi-Fi 6E, I don't know. It would be unnecessarily extra expenses, and Bluetooth 5.3. The current iPad mini was released in September 2021. Then the iPad Air, it would probably get like the M2 chip, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.3, all stuff that is currently on the iPad Pro. Again, when that will happen, it's really difficult to tell. The last one came out in March 2022. It might be updated sometimes like that, at sometime around March next year. Did they say? Oh, okay. So there were some stuff that it could be launching around October this year. So let's see if we get like an October event. That actually wouldn't be too bad. If around October is when we start seeing the first M3 Max, potentially like also getting rid of the last M1 iMac, I think it kind of would be really interesting to get like an M2 iPad Air. At that point, we would have M1 only as like as for the cheapest old MacBook Air. And that one becomes kind of irrelevant once you consider just how crazy some of the deals are for the M2 MacBook Air, where you can get it for like sub $1,000, and it originally started at $1,200, was reduced to $1,100, and at sub $1,000, it's actually less expensive than the M1 is officially from Apple's website. But a 2024 launch is also possible. I kind of would probably err on that side. I think too attractive iPad Air could like really cannibalize iPad Pro sales. My biggest wish for Apple would has always been that they give the iPad Air more base storage. I think that would be a larger update than probably anything else here. Then the regular iPad, which technically is currently at the 10th gen, so that would be now the 11th gen that we're waiting for. The 10th gen was released in October 2022, so it could launch this year, but yeah, as they're saying, no definite rumors. Yeah, it's currently on the A14, so that could go to like the A15 or the A16 in that case. A16 being ever so slightly more powerful and efficient than the A15. And perhaps the next model will also receive a price cut. I kind of don't want the price cut. I kind of want that model to be gone. I want there to be a base iPad and then an iPad Air with enough storage. That's kind of what I want. So that would like really like summarize what we have for the mini, the Air, the base iPad, and then of course the Pro supposedly sometime mid next year. Yeah, that's basically it. I think I've covered now pretty much a lot. I don't expect any Mac stuff there. I don't expect any new extra stuff for like iOS or anything. If anything, I would expect like I expect iOS 17 and iPadOS 17 to launch like by the time like the new iPhone goes official. What I mean, when it goes on sale, right? A little before that actually. But when it comes to any kind of improvements further to like iOS 17.1 or something like that, I would expect that only to happen by the time we get like some kind of October event and when macOS Sonoma is officially launching, because macOS usually launches a month after iOS and iPadOS. Yeah, so that's basically it. Would be also interesting to see if there might be some kind of exclusive stuff in watchOS 10 for like the more powerful and efficient chips inside the Series 9 and Series 10 and the Ultra. I don't know how the audience will react to it, but I think that would be pretty justified in my opinion. Like Apple has done such a good job, I think, with watchOS support, the Series 3 being like the one major outlier here, but the fact that even like the Series 4 still supports the latest watchOS version, I don't have anything against some kind of exclusivity, like limited exclusivity for that thing. Maybe they could like really give it like an offline Siri or something like that. Maybe that could work like really well. Yeah, so I've already said twice that that's basically it, but this is now really it. Um, Let me just go back to the beautiful event page here from Apple. So once again, expected on September 12th, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So please look up what in your time zone that is. Please hopefully expect a stream during that time from me. What I expect to be doing then will be, I obviously, unfortunately, cannot stream the keynote itself, but I can be streaming a live ticker from like 9to5Mac or Mac Rumors while I watch the keynote myself on my TV. So my eyes will be a little bit like that during it, but I hope it will all work out. By that time, I hope we'll get like even more subscribers, and I hope that we'll all be like really, really active and watching together. You might not even need to look at me and me looking at the live ticker. I think you could be perfectly fine just watching the event yourself and leaving me as like an extra commentary audio if you would be interested in that. For everything else, I would just say a big thank you to everybody who has joined our community in just the last couple of days. I've just recently said we went to 150 subscribers. Now we are at 158. Again, for a small channel like me, those kinds of number improvements are actually pretty big. Our last couple of chats have also been plenty lively, even if they came at a pretty inopportune time for you guys. Sorry about that. Even some less popular topics have gotten decent amount of views. As always, a big also thank you to Roland, my one and only Patreon supporter. But I appreciate all of you, all the time you give me, all your input. Please let me know if I can improve something. You can always leave me comments here or contact me on Twitter. Once again, you can find that in like my channel description. So this was now basically it. I'm saying it for the fourth time now. Thank you guys so much. This is Mark Tech tuning out.